Good morning, Acadiana. Keeping an eye on two systems out there, Marco and Laura. Marco, of course, is the more immediate threat as it's right here in the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico. It is forecast to move closer and strengthen a bit. It's close to hurricane status, and we looking at Laura that's down there toward the south and east. So let's go ahead and get right to it. And the first one we want to look at is going to be Tropical Storm Laura. And Laura is going to be the one that's going to continue to we'll be watching here, or rather Marco, as it moves a little bit farther in. Now those systems are pretty well organized now, especially as we look at the areas there right around Marco. So Marco is packing winds right now, very close to hurricane strength, and hurricane warnings have been posted now for parts of southeastern Louisiana. Still a hurricane watch for Vermilion, Iberia, and into St. Mary parishes. Then you've got some tropical storm warnings farther inland, while Lafayette, St. Landry, and up towards St. Martin and Avoyelles parishes all now looking at a tropical storm watch. Now the winds are still at 70 miles per hour, located here in the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico. Here's the Yucatan Peninsula. Here's the western tip of Cuba. You got Florida here, and then Louisiana just kind of right behind the banner that we have here. But it is forecast to start to move northward and could make landfall here near the mouth of the Mississippi River sometime during the morning hours tomorrow, which means we would start to feel some of the effects from Marco probably as early as tomorrow morning, but it would weaken and then move over land. But it still brings the center of circulation pretty close to Lafayette here with winds around 40 miles per hour, and was looking at some of the earlier models, especially down into St. Martin, St. Mary, and into Iberia parishes, where the forecasts were putting on maybe as much as 50 or 60 mile per hour winds. Of course, all the models are pretty well clustered here for a landfall over southeastern Louisiana, and generally do follow the track, the official track from the National Hurricane Center, but a lot of these lines do start to make their way toward Acadiana. So what we're expecting when it comes to Marco is more of the heavier downpours are probably going to stay a little bit farther toward the east, Biloxi, Mobile, and even toward the New Orleans area, with lighter amounts back to the west. So this might be more of a breeze as it moves on through, with those winds at about 40 miles per hour. And it does show that a large part of Acadiana has greater than a 50% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds. That would be above 39 miles per hour, with the better chances of seeing those tropical storm force and maybe even some hurricane force winds right there confined to the immediate coast. And it does appear that the bigger storm surge is going to be over the eastward facing coast here of southeastern Louisiana, 2 to 4 feet as you get down toward Grand Isle, and then over here toward the Acadiana region, more of a 2 to 3 foot surge. But again, if it moves inland here to the east of us, we're going to see more of a northerly flow, so that might even be less. So that would be a better case scenario for us here in the Acadiana region, especially there along the coast. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to Laura. Now Laura has done some impressive shifts back and forth here as far as the forecast track with the last 3 advisories. This particular advisory has actually shifted a little bit farther west than what we saw with the 4 o'clock advisory. The 4 o'clock advisory was putting it on the coast of Vermilion Parish as a Category 2. Now we're looking at possibly a Category 2 making landfall closer to the Texas-Louisiana state line. Now that keeps all of Acadiana within the forecast cone, so we still have to prepare as if we're going to take a direct hit on this one. The warnings that you're seeing on here don't reflect Laura. Those probably won't kick in until sometime tomorrow or early Tuesday, but the forecast models are still pretty well clustered over much of Louisiana. They've seen a bit of a shift farther toward the west. And in fact, this morning during the 4 o'clock advisory, several of these lines were over toward the Houston area, but they seem to have scooted back in. So there's a lot more agreement clustering here over central and the southwestern Louisiana coastline. Now, winds with Laura right now are 50 miles per hour, but it still has quite a ways to go when it moves across the end of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and then it's got Cuba. And if it stays over land over Cuba that entire time, that's going to affect some of the intensification. But a lot of the forecast models are showing very low shear, very warm waters over the southeastern part of the Gulf of Mexico, which would indicate some strengthening. And the rainfall totals are a lot more impressive when it comes to Laura compared to what we were seeing with Laura compared to Marco. But as you can see with the forecast track maybe being a little bit farther toward the west, that's bringing a decent amount of rain, up to 10 inches of rain over parts of southwestern Louisiana. And as far as winds, now I've seen this kind of drop off just a little bit as far as the forecast winds, but it still looks like greater than 60% chance, maybe even 70% chance that a large part of Acadiana will be seeing tropical storm force winds. Those would be in excess of 40 miles per hour. But if this comes in as a Category 2 hurricane, we might see a large part of the Acadiana region actually experience hurricane force winds. So here's your timeline, and you should have your preparations wrapped up by tonight, early tomorrow at the very, very latest. Tides are going to be elevated, so boating is not going to be advised here, at least through Thursday morning. Flooding rain right now looks like Marco might bring in about 2 to 4 inches of rain in some cases. That's fairly manageable for us here in Acadiana. It has been relatively dry over the last couple of weeks, but looking farther down the road, Laura could impact us a little bit more when it comes to the rain, maybe that 2 to 6 inch range. But of course, all that's going to change. Laura's landfall is still almost 5 days away, so you could still see some wild swings here and there. Marco will probably bring 25 to 35 mile per hour winds, some gusts close to 50 as the center goes by sometime tomorrow, rather into early Tuesday morning. And then we'll watch to see what happens when it comes to Laura. And then tornado right around the center of circulation. Again, that's all going to be on the dependent when it comes to the exact track of Marco. Same goes for Laura. A lot of times you have those isolated tornadoes that are centered right around that center of circulation. So that's all going to be dependent on track. But once again, you really need to have your preparations wrapped up here. Probably by tonight would be best, if not early tomorrow morning, at least for Marco. And then if you really will watch that forecast for Laura, if things really look like they're going to ramp up for our area, you may need to do some additional preparations here going into Tuesday and Tuesday night as Marco makes an exit and we start to approach areas when Laura starts to move in. Now, you can get the latest. We're going to have another update coming up at 1 o'clock. That's when the National Hurricane Center will release a new update on the numbers, the position, as well as the wind speeds of Marco and Laura. But those new storm tracks and intensity forecasts, those will come out at 4 o'clock, and that's usually when they make changes when it comes to any watches or warnings when it comes to either one of these tropical systems. But it is very unusual to see 2 tropical systems coming close to the same area within a 2-day period, but that's what we're up against right now. Of course, you can always get the latest at KATC.com, use the KATC app or any streaming device, and then our social media pages as well. We will have the latest.